All right, so there's some drama, news, whatever, at yet another possible reprint of beta in Sorcery. And, it's got the usual people up in arms, new people who are on whatever usual side, up in arms on one side, and counter revolutionaries on the other side. In every card game, you've got players who are strictly players. They just play, so they buy the singles. They might buy some packs to rip, but for the most part, all they're doing is building decks and playing either casually or trying to find some sort of pro tournament or at least some local tournaments and that kind of stuff. And that's all they care about. So their motivation is to have the cheapest cards possible because they don't want to spend a lot of money on every single deck they've got to buy. Because they're not just playing one deck. They're updating it as new sets come out, but also as the meta changes or whatever. Whatever reason, they're getting multiple different sets. So that's their motivation if they're strictly players. Now, then there's collectors, and this is where the first time, like the first kind of overlap happens, because often I'd say the majority of people are players and collectors at the same time to some degree or other. Either they're more on the collector side or they're more on the player side, but they're doing both, right? And if someone's strictly a collector, they care about being able to get a full set, a certain type or number of cards, and they want cheap boxes because they want to break the boxes and they want to get the collection together, they'll be buying singles as well to top up their collection. But they also want their collection, I'd say for the most part, most pure collectors want their collection to be worth something later on, so that they haven't just sunk a bunch of money and it's worthless in 5 years. And players, some of them may still want the decks that they've bought to be worth something because they'll play the decks and they may not want to continue to play whatever type of thing, and they'll sell off those cards to get whatever new deck it is that they're trying to make. And also, since they've been collecting these cards as well as players, one of the ways of fueling their player habits and the decks that they get is to crack packs, take out the singles they want, and then sell off the others. So there are some players that are also in the third category, which is finance/investors, and they could be either people that are investing in it for long term because they see long term gain, or short term because they see short term flipping potential. But either way, they want to make money off of their hobby, in addition to wanting to have the stuff that they bought retain value like the collector does. So with players, they want the cheapest cards possible, and preferably the cheapest boxes possible. But collectors might want the cheapest box possible, but they want to retain their value if one of their reasons for doing so is sort of bordering on the investment finance side of things. And the investment finance, they pretty much always want everything to retain value and to go up in either the short term or the long term. So these three forces are always kind of fighting each other in a collectible card game. And so when someone buys a box, they want to be able to crack it open and sell the contents to recover the remainder of the box that they don't use, or and that's usually a player collector. An investor wants to keep that box sealed and to keep it around for 5-10 years and then sell it for more. A flipper wants to buy the box and immediately make 10 to 20%, maybe even more on it. So whenever reprints come up, and specifically a reprint of a set and a reprint of a box, then each of these people have conflicting interests. So the player sees that more product is coming, therefore cheaper singles, more access to singles, more access to the cards, more players, more new players having access to those cards, therefore more people to play against, therefore a more robust play network, a more bigger tournament scene, that kind of thing, and maybe some new friends can get into the hobby that didn't know about it previously, but there's a barrier to entry now because of the cost. The investor sees it as just purely a loss because, as more, it dilutes the value of what it is they've already invested in. And the collector is sort of on the fence. They can continue to collect and top up their collection if they haven't already finished the collection of a set or whatever it is they're doing. But also they've lost some of the retained value. So when a set gets reprinted, and the one that we're discussing isn't this Arthurian Legends, it's the beta run, an in-brand box here. I have some singles here. The beta run is, and yes, I'm selling Sorcery singles in store, and not many people have product. I have, I think, 2 beta boxes left out of a ton of beta boxes that I had, and I may have sold them a little bit quicker than I wanted to. I mean, it's been a year because while there was a reprint in the summer that topped up some stores around the world, including the United States, that never came to Canada. I don't know if it's ever coming, and I don't know if this current reprint is currently coming. But anyway, to get back to it, we get the reprint, and it maybe devalues things a little bit, and maybe some people are excited about that, some people are upset about that. And from the investor side and collector side, they see it as a betrayal because they were given to understand that what was out there, and it was now safe to move in and do whatever it is that they want to do. From the player side, the players, specifically in Sorcery, got this idea that beta was for players because alpha was unavailable unless you backed the Kickstarter back in 2022 and then waited a year to a year and a half to get it shipped to you. So in that time, the hobby grew and new people came on board, and there was no access for them to alpha unless they paid the pre-order prices on eBay from people who did back the Kickstarter, or later after it came out. And of course, that moved from the 150 US a box we all paid at the Kickstarter, that slowly crept up, and to just before it released, I think it was only about 400 or 500 US a box by the time people started getting Sorcery in hand. So if people had pre-ordered from other people, they did well. They didn't pay the 150 a box, but maybe they paid 200 bucks, maybe they paid 300 a box. And as far as I know, it didn't move so quickly that people canceled their pre-orders, right, and then sold it for a higher price. So then after that, and when beta, basically around the time beta was getting ready to release, it's where it hit about 1,000 US a box, and it's been sitting anywhere between 900 to 1,200 US a box now for basically the entire time beta's been out. And beta has gone from, was it 150 US a box was MSRP to maybe 200, 210, and it's been pretty healthy. A lot of it was kept at 150 for months because of how much product Team Covenant had, or at least it wasn't maybe a ton of product, maybe there wasn't as much demand, and things only slowly went. In any case, the point is that you couldn't get alpha cards because you weren't part of the Kickstarter, or you didn't want to pay markups for people who were part of the Kickstarter. So then when beta came out, some people on forums, maybe on Discord, I don't know where it started. I was in Mike Servati's Facebook group, the Sorcery Contested Realm community, from Collector Art House, and I was watching him do his stuff, and then more people came into that community. But somewhere, that's where I first saw this idea that beta was for players. I mean, and maybe I said something similar. It's like, but I didn't mean that beta was going to be just an endless reprint for players and everyone to get in the game for forever. I meant that because they were shut out of alpha and they didn't want to pay the markups, beta would be coming soon. And I said this basically about a month or two, maybe 3 months before beta was released, that beta was the time for people who wanted to play the game to get the cards they needed, either the sealed boxes, the packs, the singles they needed to be able to play the game without having to pay the high cost of alpha. But that didn't mean that the set was made for players. It's all the sets are made for everybody, right? So there are people playing in alpha. There are players of alpha. There are collectors of alpha, and there are investors of alpha. The beta had the exact same thing, although there was a much larger player base within beta. That's great. And then, of course, with Arthurian Legends, it's an even bigger player base. And that bigger player base means larger demand, because there's a bigger player base. That also means there's going to be more collectors and a few more investors. So as the pie gets bigger, the demand gets bigger as well. And that's good. That's healthy. So in addition to the beta being relatively inexpensive for most of the year, and still it's not bad. I mean, it has not grown at the pace that alpha did, and it didn't grow at the pace of the first few boxes of Flesh and Blood, or how crazy MetaZoo got. It's been healthy and relatively static. So people that have been coming in that are new can still get into it in the same way that someone a year ago could. It just means that there's less product. And so now there's this fourth individual from the players, the collectors. One second. From the players, collectors, investors, there's the store owner. And the store owner could be a mixture of those three in addition to owning a store, or just purely a store owner. And the store owner, what they want is to be able to buy things and sell things to people. And it's not about flipping, it's not about investing necessarily. It could be. But what it is bring in product, sell the product, bring in the next product, sell the product. So the once a year model of Sorcery, having only one set a year, means that stores find it difficult to keep product on the shelf so that all year long people that are interested in Sorcery can play Sorcery. But then also they don't really have product to sell them as well. They keep it on the shelf, but it disappears, and you can run drafts. Drafts aren't terribly profitable for stores. Selling boxes, selling packs, selling singles are. And if everything's disappearing and there aren't boxes to sell, then to them there's other products they could be putting their money into, therefore they're not going to order as much. But because Sorcery has been relatively successful, we've had a lot more stores added to it. And this was told to me by my distributors, that when we were told we were getting allocated on Arthurian Legends, which we didn't get allocated on beta, basically I got what I ordered, and I don't think anyone got allocated on beta. We got allocated on Arthurian Legends because, so Eric's Curiosa used information from the Backstarter, from Rudy from Alpha Investments, from Team Covenant, and from the pre-orders that Team Covenant generated of beta, and the pre-orders from their distribution, and some other metrics to determine how much beta there needed to be. And then they did the same thing with how much Arthurian Legends there needed to be. But in between beta and Arthurian Legends, I think Sorcery grew way more than it did between alpha and beta, I guess, or over the time period of beta's lifespan. Anyway, the point is that my distributor told me that double or more the number of stores ordered Sorcery this time from when they ordered beta, which means that while the print run didn't necessarily go up, didn't necessarily go down, maybe it stayed the same, I don't know, but now there's more demand, at least on the distributor side. So that meant that people got allocated, which when people who were going, customers found out, they were worried they weren't going to get their product, and that may have had a temporary spike in the price of boxes. But Arthurian Legends came out, and it wasn't terribly expensive. It basically hovered between the map price and the MSRP, and it's still there right now. I've got enough boxes. I mean, more so than I do of beta boxes and alpha boxes. I've only got 2 alpha and 2 beta boxes each left. So that meant that now even if Eric Curioso was very good at gauging print run numbers, it got spread out amongst more stores. And of course, those stores need to run events to make it worth their while, and also need to have players continually coming in and buying product to make it worth their while, unless they change their model for this one product. Because basically, with Pokemon or Magic, every month or two, you buy a new set, and most of it moves, and then money goes into the next sets, and things and money continually moves. But with Sorcery, you buy a bunch, and then you have to sit on most of it to trickle it out throughout the year if you want lots of players coming in and buying product, or you've got to sell all of it immediately to get the cash for the next thing. So like, it's more difficult for a store to manage. So the reprint is probably meant to help stores manage better. So they changed how they're going to put out product with Arthurian Legends. They decided that this box will be out in waves. They didn't disclose to us how many waves. So far, there's been 2, although maybe the first 2 are actually just 1, because they were within weeks of each other. So I've got my second wave, and I hope that there are 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th waves to keep us stocked throughout the year if they're really going to stick to the once-a-year model. And while I understand that if you're a sorcery enthusiast, a player, a collector, an investor, even in all those 3 categories, and even some store owners are enthusiastic about one set a year, I don't think it works. I'm unconvinced, but I understand that it's not that there's an overwhelming majority of us that want more than one set a year. I understand that maybe it's a slight majority, or a bit more than a slight majority, but it could be less than a majority. I can't really gauge it. I haven't put out a poll, but people want once a year, and that's clear to me. When I first put up my video, does it need more than one set a year, I thought it would be a tiny number of people that wanted one set a year, and that's not the case. So people like the one set a year model, but unfortunately, it's difficult for stores to manage a one set a year model. It's probably even difficult for 2 sets a year. So I think it's got to be somewhere between 2 and 3 sets a year for it to work for stores. And if it doesn't work for stores, I mean, they could go to a direct-to-consumer model, but that won't help the game at all. And I think the game will be healthier if they have 2 to 3 sets a year. And I think the game will be healthier if they either don't reprint beta, or this is the last, and this is the stated last reprint of beta. And while, from your perspective, if you're purely a player, that the game doing better means lots of players joining in and therefore having access to beta cards, that's not the entirety of a game, of a collectible card game. It's collectible, it has cards, and it has a game. So it has to be collectible. Otherwise, we're just talking about a board game, right? Or, like, say, Dominion. Where's Dominion up here? Where is it? Oh, it's way back there. Anyway, Dominion comes with a box, comes with every card you need. Then there's some expansions that, it change the game. But if you want to play Dominion, you can buy one box, and you got every card you need. You don't need to buy any of the expansions. It can add flavor to it, add excitement to it, but there's no chance that you absolutely have to have an expansion of a board game any more than you need to have a board game itself. The point is, Dominion is a one and done box, but that's not what a collectible card game is. And the reason people are excited about it, and the reason why Magic the Gathering, Pokemon move off the shelves and create an environment where stores exist that have play spaces for the players, is because it continually sells. Board games, and I don't know, maybe we're in a big board game slump since I've opened the store, but board games don't move in comparison to collectible card games. And If you were running a purely board game store, like you're selling Dominion, you're selling just in-box things, I don't think that store can exist outside of a large city. And it can't, I don't even think it can thrive in a large city. It has to supplement. Even if the owner only likes board games, they've got to supplement with collectible card games, Warhammer, that kind of stuff. So, to sum up everything, this beta reprint needs to be small, or, at least maybe to top up the new stores that have come on and to top up the regions where it needs it, and maybe finally get a reprint Canada so I can get some more beta boxes because I'm down to almost nothing. But that's fine. If there is no reprint and no one gets a reprint, I'm fine with not getting any more beta boxes. But I'd like to get a couple more because I want to help out the community and that sort of thing. But as long as no one else is getting it, I'm fine with not getting it. But if other people are getting it, then I definitely want some. But one of the problems is you look at MetaZoo, you look at Lorcana and Star Wars, is that people are saying we need more product, right? You have to determine, do they need more product and how much product do they need? Because they say they want more product, but by the time the product gets to them, will they have moved on, or did we overestimate how much product they needed and then you tank the whole market? So Eric's Curiosa has been very good at that so far. And I don't expect it to change, but the reprint has, obviously there's on these Facebook groups or Discords or wherever else people are communicating about sorcery, comment sections like in this video, you'll find varying different arguments back and forth from any one of the three types of people, and those people could overlap with the other types. So the players will shut down anyone from the investor side who says that there shouldn't be any more reprints of beta. And I've given you their motivations, and the players were asking for a little bit more beta, more reprint of beta, and investors would shut them down. And collectors are sort of on the fence closer to the investor side, I think. But it depends, I don't know. Let me know if you where on the Venn diagram of this collectible card game you are. So I would say that the reprint, again, no one said beta was for players, except for people on forums. I don't think it was ever said by Eric's Curiosa or most people that were making videos or people running Facebook groups. They just said that the players will now have more access to the cards that the alpha had. That it wasn't meant that this was going to be an evergreen product. I don't think that was ever stated. And, now we have Arthurian Legends, and we need to get to the next. There's a dragon set coming, but it's just like, it's an all-in-one. You buy the cards, you got the cards. So that, you'll actually see why it's important that the collectible card game is different than the board game. You'll see how this dragon set sells. It's not going to sell like Arthurian Legends or Beta, and even it's not because it has 13 cards in the set. It's because when you buy it, you've got the cards. And if you need a play set, well, then you buy 4 of them, but you're never going to buy it again, right? But with this, with the box, with the booster packs, you're not going to get everything, and that's the point of the collectible nature of the game. The box is where you're going to get the cards, but you have to continually go back to the well, and then more sets come out, and you go back to that well. So you're going to see a lot of people arguing from one stance or another, and you'll be able to understand more why they're arguing from that stance, what their motivations are. And then, of course, the store owners become a little bit of a spoiler in that because they have different motivations, even if they're investors, collectors, and players themselves. They have an additional layer of motivation and an additional level of understanding because, one, they've been selling a lot of different collectible card games and they've seen what happens in markets. Two, they have access to information on the distribution level and maybe even past the distribution level that a player, a collector isn't aware of. And while they might be able to share some of that, they can't share all of it because otherwise they would get their distributors angry at them. So this argument about whether beta needs a reprint or not, I fall on the side of, no, we were fine. Let's move on. Let's get more sets. To, you know, if you're gonna do it, then I should get some too. Canada should get some too because we didn't get any of the beta reprints, but we did. Maybe we got a lot more stock than everybody else. That might be the case because I did get a very large amount of stock at the very beginning of beta. But in any case, when you're talking online about what you think the game needs, recognize that it's from your perspective and it's based on your needs, but your needs don't necessarily overlap with the health of the game or the health of the market or whatever. It's based on what you want. It's not based on what everybody will benefit from. And Ars Curiosa has to consider that, because if everyone doesn't benefit, then the game starts to shrink, and then Ars Curiosa, has to move on to either making something else or shut down. And it can't just be based on what you think is best. They have to consider what works for everybody, which means you're not going to get what you want. You're going to get some of the things you want, but a lot of the time, the other side that you disagree with is going to get what they want, which means you're not going to get what you want. And you have to recognize that. You can say your opinions, of course, everyone has their own opinions, but just recognize that your opinions are the same level of veracity as my opinion, anyone's opinion, and it's just an opinion. And the only thing that really matters is Ars Curiosa and their decisions and their opinions, and if those things are correct in the long term. And that's it. That's my discussion about the Sorcery beta reprint. Let me know what you think. Let me know what I got wrong, what I got right, or whether I should just stop talking about it. There are people that I don't want to hear about this anymore. But there's people that don't even know these discussions are happening. If you don't want to hear these things anymore, you can be with those people who have checked out, or never checked in, or they don't care. They have other things they like to watch online and discuss with online. And the game they play is something they play with their friends at the kitchen table, and they're never going to hear any of this. So those are actually the bulk majority of any collectible card base, any fandom, that kind of thing. So just recognize that just because we all have this discussion doesn't mean that this is a big discussion. It's probably not. So if you don't like this kind of discussion or these kinds of things always coming up, yeah, I understand, and that's why this other larger group has not been involved at all, and why they won't ever get involved. But I kind of like discussing these things online, and I like seeing what other people think. So let me know what you think below.